Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. My special guest today is going to be Arthur Wesley Larson, Esquire. He likes to go by Wes. He's a developer in construction and doing economic development for the city and the county. I think you're going to learn and appreciate what he has to say. Stay with us. Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. I have a special guest today, and his name is Arthur Wesley Larson, Esquire, officially. He's known as Wes Larson throughout the community, and we're going to learn about his dreams and also his history as 4 generations in Kitsap County and mostly Bremerton. Welcome.
Thank you.
Wes, tell us, first of all, your great-grandfather, the beginning of the Larsons in Bremerton and in Kitsap.
Well, actually, it was the Cady family, but my great-grandfather came to Kitsap County towards the end of the 19th century, and he founded a post office in Brownsville, and eventually moved to Bremerton to the corner of 6th and Broadway, and he was mayor in 1915. His daughter was my grandmother, so they are, as you refer to, a legacy family in the county. We're engaged in a project now where we're attempting to move forward with an affordable housing project at the corner of 6th and Broadway, actually, which is a site of my great-grandfather's, of the ancestral home, so to speak.
That's exciting. Yeah. But you, growing up, you went to Bremerton High School?
CK.
CK Central.
Yeah, but Smith School originally, and then moved to Silverdale in 1970.
Now, there was a farm that was in Silverdale.
Yes.
Was that your grandfather's?
That was, yes, well, it was my grandfather's and then passed on through the family, but that was on Clear Creek Road and right across the street from what is now the Kitsap Mall, site of the AMC Theater. And so I remember that when it was all pasture land. Silverdale back in the 70s didn't have a single traffic light, if you can imagine that. It had one blinking light, population of less than 5,000. And yeah, it was an idyllic sort of agrarian and agricultural haven growing up there.
I think most of Western Washington was like that, 50s, 60s, and 70s. What's happened to the mall now and now to the trails, and you've had some fingerprints on a lot of growth in Silverdale and of course in what's going on in Bremerton.
Right.
There's been some coverage in the newspaper, and as far as in growing up, you now are a developer, you are in economic development, you're in the housing side of it, and you've attracted a multitude of people around you. So you have your own construction, and they're part of some of your team, and that's FPH. You have financiers that come from all over the world, and I believe when you were in New York, tell us a little bit about when you went to college and some of the steps between college and now.
Well, after graduating CK in 1980, went on to the University of Washington, and from there to graduate school. I moved to New York City in the late 80s and was there for 9 years. I was in international banking and worked with Bank Austria as a portfolio manager there for about $1 billion portfolio. And that was subsidiaries of European companies in the US. And we banked those companies. We also did a lot of real estate lending, but it was a good background. And being in New York City, it's just it's just a great place to be when you're your late 20s, early 30s. Great experience. I learned certainly finance and banking, and that sort of played into my current role, which is as a developer in assembling the capital, acquiring the properties, and our model is a little unique in that we're not a for hire. We're not a fee developer. We buy the property, we develop it, we own it, we manage it. So our goal, as we say, we're developing community, and that's really what we're all about. Is we are entrenched in the community. We're from the community. We want to own assets and make a difference in revitalizing Bremerton and contributing to to the overall benefit of Kitsap County. And I'm proud of a lot of the projects that we've done and some of the projects that we're just getting started on. So,
and a fun thing is that as you say, that you've developed early in your life some networking. Your wife now, you met her in New York.
I did, yeah.
And she is actually from Singapore.
She is, yeah.
And were you in a Chinese class when you met?
Yeah, we were. Yeah. Well, yeah, we were in a Mandarin class in New York City. That's a dialect of Chinese. And I was at the time contemplating a transfer to Hong Kong, to the Far East. That was when China was just opening up. And so I met her there in class. And yeah, she's from Singapore. And so we met there and got married. And somehow I persuaded her to move back to Kitsap County, if you can imagine that. From Manhattan to Kitsap County, that's a little bit of a transition. But yeah, we love it here. The quality of life is just great. And no place else I'd rather be in July than right here.
Absolutely,
So, yeah.
even with a hot day.
Yeah.
Now, she is part of your company, and you just celebrated 20 years of marriage.
That's right, yeah, 20 years.
So
Yeah.
you can tell that that's a solid for everything. Something else is some of the people that you're now surrounded with is that you've made a tremendous name for Sound West Group. And some of that is because of your connections. I know that as the mayor, you've brought some of your investors, some people that are interested in the quality of life in this beautiful area that we live in. So having said that, you still are doing some work over in Seattle and on Lake Union.
Yeah, we have phase 2 on Lake Union of an 80-unit project. So it's not always the Seattle developers who come over there. We go over there and what we do in Sound West Group in this particular project. So we have 80 units at phase 2 that are under construction now. It's on Lake Union, North Lake Union, right near the old Red Robin. And so that actually is going to be complete next month. And I named that building after my father and grandfather. That's the A.W. Larson building. So yeah, you know, in terms of our investors here in Kitsap County, we are attracting investors. We have some investors from Southern California. We have investors from the Far East. We have a family from Thailand that invests with us here, and then some from Europe as well. But they all get it. They see Kitsap County and they see this wonderful quality of life, as you mentioned. But you know, for myself coming from New York, and I think for a lot of people who lived in big cities, they come here, they see Bremerton, or I like to refer to Bremerton as Seattle's Brooklyn. It's a place, it's blue collar, it's got a shipyard, it's a little bit on the edge, it's kind of hip and funky and cool, and it is just going to be, you know, as it continues to grow and as the millennials start to you know,
find their
way here and get, you know, the housing opportunities, lower cost housing and so forth. We're just really excited about it, you know, and the Roxy Theater is going to open up next year, and that's going to be fun. So, yeah, there's a lot going on.
You've heard me
here.
say
Yeah.
that Bremerton now is a legacy city, and that fits. And I've had some people say, oh, well, we're really a Navy town. Well, we have a Navy Yard City. That's an area of our community. But the Navy was here first, and your dad was a Marine.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Dad was 1st Marines, 11th Artillery Regiment, and he was at both Guadalcanal and Okinawa, and decorated with a Bronze Star, and went on to, he was in a shipyard for 43 years, and retired, and you know, just a stellar background, and always very loyal and patriotic.
He'd be so pleased today to see the expansion of our Marine group because of our increase in Bangor Trident and the submarines. We now have a huge amount of Marines that are here on base, much more than when he was here, and he was probably scattered, like you say, throughout the country.
Yeah, well, the military is a big part of Kitsap County. It always will be. The wonderful men and women who make all the sacrifices for our country. You know, we as people, as the people of Kitsap, we cherish them. You know, and it's a huge part of our economy. I mean, Naval Base Kitsap is, depending on, I mean, it's 40% roughly, I think, of our economy here, if not more.
Right.
And you know, it's always going to be a big piece. The challenge that we have for the future, though, is to also diversify our economy.
That's
we need to bring in more business. We need more jobs here. This is an interesting statistic that came out at the Puget Sound Business Journal Roundtable last week, that the second largest employer, quote unquote, in Kitsap County after Naval Base Kitsap is the city of Seattle. There are 14,000 commuters who work in Seattle. There are a lot of people in Kitsap who would be working there, given more convenient and frequent and rapid access to that
we're
market.
going to talk
about that later.
No, we're going to talk about it now,
Yeah,
because
okay.
we'll flip through some of the things. But as people get into our program, something coming up on the November ballot is the passenger-only ferry.
Yes.
And there are some misconceptions out there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people that do not like it. My personal feeling is that it doesn't seem to meet the needs of some people that are talking the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
As Bremerton is growing, today we're 40,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
In the next year or so, we're going to be 50,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And that crossing between Bremerton and Seattle is not a division. That
Mm-hmm.
water doesn't divide it. It is the connection. And we used to have hourly ferries that ran every hour on the hour. It was busy, and we were busy. So a passenger-only ferry is, I believe, the future.
Mm-hmm.
It is our light rail.
Absolutely.
We don't have to lay down any of the rail lines. We don't have to maintain a road. The water is open. We've built a boat that accommodates rich passage.
Mm-hmm.
We've tested it for 10 years. So we're on the move
Mm-hmm.
for having rapid crossings.
Mm-hmm.
And we already know that 1 out of 5
Mm-hmm.
are crossing over there, and not just commuters. We have the mariners that are in season.
Mm-hmm.
I was there on Sunday, and I'm telling you, the stadium was packed, and it was also seafair.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what's going on. We've got people moving back and forth in both directions.
Absolutely. It's about more than just serving the needs of those who commute to and from Seattle
Mm-hmm.
too. And it's about jobs, it's about the economy, it's about investment,
Mm-hmm.
it's about creating opportunity. It's about keeping our kids here, honestly, it's part of it. You know, when you think about families and, you know, growing up in Kitsap County, I left Kitsap County to go other places to find opportunities. I moved to Seattle to go to the University of Washington. I mean, if I could have taken a 30-minute boat, then Sound Transit, 5-minute walk to Sound Transit, take Sound Transit 10 minutes. How soon do I get to the University of Washington?
8 minutes. I've done it.
Yeah, less than an hour. I'm from my door in Kitsap. We're talking about 3 points. We're talking about Kingston, Bremerton, and Southworth, direct to the waterfront. And so it's really about our young people too, and creating opportunities for them, giving them access to what is the #1 market for jobs in the USA last year, Forbes magazine, Seattle. On so many metrics, Seattle is the top city, or among the top cities in the US.
But there's no room. It's busy, it's crowded, it's you're in lines, you're in traffic. So you're absolutely right, Wes, we have the perfect place to live here and to take that commute, no matter where you're going, to the theater or a ball game. It makes it perfect.
Absolutely, and keep in mind too that part of this plan is that seniors and disadvantaged, handicapped, and youths are traveling at half fare on the boat. So I believe that's correct, right?
It is correct.
That's part of the plan. So it really provides a great opportunity for those people, again, to access that market, the jobs, opportunities, the cultural events you mentioned. Now, you also have to keep in mind that what's happening on the Seattle waterfront is a $1 billion over improvement, and that waterfront is going to be a promenade. It's going to be an incredible place to go and be and tourism is already there, but with this new waterfront, it's just going to be a huge attraction. And what's the number 1 tourist attraction in Washington State is the Washington State ferries. So now you add to that the boats that are going to make these 30-minute or less crossings, and suddenly you've got opportunities for our businesses and opportunities for tourism in Kitsap County that don't exist right now. And so I just think it's a win-win all the way around. I know that there's concern about with regard to the cost. You mentioned Sound Transit. The cost of this of the ferry, at 0.3% of 1% sales tax, is much much less than Sound Transit. Sound Transit is a multi-billion-dollar
light rail
system.
and metro,
Yeah,
they're all
yeah.
in a much higher capacity.
And so our Sound Transit is really a bargain, you know, in terms of being able to link into that and give us, you know, the regional access to the whole region.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we look to the future, and now today, it isn't for today, but as we look to the future, the young people, and even our baby boomers, the people that are now walking and riding bikes, they want to take and be able to get somewhere and not have to find a place to park. No one wants to necessarily take your car away from you, but there's a time when you don't want to have to deal with it. And I think this is a really perfect time. Speaking of ferries, next March we're going to get the newest Olympic class 144 ferry.
Yeah, I heard that.
We're going to have 16 of our own local artists that are going to be able to have their paintings installed. We're having a big deal because Bremerton hasn't had a new boat on that run. I want to get back to Bremerton for a minute because as you're talking about some of the big things in phase 2 of very expensive housing programs, you've been able to stay in affordable housing in certain markets, and especially in Bremerton.
Yeah.
So as you're taking away some of the blight in areas we've got, you're maintaining a number of units, so we can always say we're not eliminating all of that. Seattle can't say that. So you're taking care of absolutely every type of person that would be working here or living here by the types of units you're getting involved in.
Well, our project on 4th Street, for example, and you know, we have in total, I think, about $140 million stabilized value of projects underway, six different projects from Bainbridge to, we've got on Bainbridge Island, Bainbridge Landing, we've got Paulsbo, Silverdale, Bremerton, but you know, Bremerton on 4th Street, for example, we've got a plan there to create 66 units, and 20% of those would be affordable. But what we're doing there is we're repurposing the old Sears department store, which has been vacant since the early 80s. The Sears, or excuse me, the Ford dealership and showroom, 6 buildings in total on the 4th Street block, including the Roxy Theater. And so, you know, it's transitioning from these old dilapidated vacant uses into residences in downtown, and really, you know, recapturing the urban landscape, because and I think the millennial generation, there's a demand for urban lifestyle. There's a demand to be downtown, where you've got, you know, services, you've got art galleries, you've got you know, a cool old theater that, well, it's not, we're done with it, 5 breweries, all of that. So, you know, there's just, it's an exciting time, but we've got to have more, housing. The vacancy rate in this county is, depending on which study you look at, you know, we think it's less than 2%.
I agree with you.
And we really need to have more housing. And you know, there are 3 factors involved with that. You know, the first is that you do have, in the 25 to 35-year-old generation, the largest number of people coming out looking for housing since the baby boomer generation.
That's correct.
You also have in Bremerton this kind of phenomenon where you had a lot of single-family rental homes out there. Those have been absorbed, or they've been put back on the market as for sale product. The third factor is there's been no new development, and really, you know, lack of any quality development out there. So, and then you've got the commuter market too. But you put all those things together, and we've got a real housing crunch here that we need to.
We can't build fast enough.
We can't build fast enough. You know, that said, you got to build in the right places. You know, we don't want sprawl. We want people living in our cities and using our transportation systems and our schools and all of that. So
the nicest thing about, again, what you're doing is you've concentrated on an entire block of the city, and what that does is we're rebuilding, and we're keeping the legacy. And you spoke of the Roxy Theater. It was built in 1921, and it was a time that the sailors, it was built to take our mind off of the war efforts. And so I know that you're going to take it back. You've got some of the things that are the remnants. We just were able to keep that tucked away. The Admiral Theater has been redone and modernized. It's a great theater for shows from Las Vegas, New York, and LA. but it's not going to have the ambience. I believe you've already talked to somebody from California that is in the theater market.
Well, we've got an operator for the Roxy, and well, it's going to be three. There are going to be three parts, three components of the Roxy. The independent film part is going to be run by Faraway Entertainment. Faraway Entertainment is the best at what they do. They've got the Admiral Theater in West Seattle, which they've restored. They've got the Varsity in the U District. They did the Linwood in Bainbridge, and they originally had, I think, the Rose Theater there too. So those guys, they're just very good at restoring theaters. And we brought in a guy who's an expert on the marquee, the restoration, the design elements of the theater. So he's working on it. But Faraway Entertainment will do the independent film part, kind of the Sundance film stuff. And then we've got the Admiral Theater is going to do the live entertainment, and they're going to put the acts in the Roxy that don't fit in the Admiral.
That's great.
And you mentioned sort of off-Broadway style dinner theater stuff that Admiral does, but the Roxy will be more, I think younger, hipper. There'll be some comedy. There'll be some live performances. It's going to attract that
Seattle market. That's for certain.
And then the community. The community is going to have events there too, and that's going to be an important piece of it.
So with all the things that are happening today and that we have planned for the future, before we close, Wes, tell us why you named the apartment complex on the hill overlooking Manette Spyglass.
Well, that harkens back to English class in high school, where we read Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, and Spyglass Hill is the tallest hill on Treasure Island. And so Spyglass Hill is the high point in Bremerton, 220 feet over sea level, and as measured from the low water mark of the dry dock, I think, in the shipyard. So the views are spectacular, and starting from the first floor, even our parking garage has a view, out over the water, and so it's just, we got a sky lounge. The rooftop deck is going to have barbecue. It's going to have a fireplace up there.
When's it going to be finished?
We're going to be finished in mid to late October. I think in the next month, we'll finally see that black netting come off and see it get painted and look like
the neat thing is that you have such a heart for the city, for the county, and it is a treasure. So to use Treasure Island as a comparison to Bremerton, I can't thank you enough for being my guest. And I know we all learned some great things about the love we have for Bremerton. Thank you, Wes.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and we appreciate all that you're doing for the city, and you're doing a great job. And thanks for having me.
Join us next time with Bring Bremerton Together and Mayor Patty Land.